Hey guys, welcome back to the Tough Love Podcast with Dr. John O'Connor. We're going to talk about how tough love originated and what inspired me to go to you, my audience, and talk about everything from my inner thoughts to interviewing some amazing people, and where I am now, a little bit over a year in, celebrating, a lot more wins and losses with regards to podcasts and what I've learned. But like any good story, I would love to start by saying those that inspired me that are in the podcast community. And the first and foremost would be Ed Mylett. I was during COVID, and I think a huge part of the world and community, especially in self-development and business development and mastery, look at people like Ed Mylett and Andy Frisella and Jocko Willink. I thought was awesome, as well as his partner. I believe his name is Leif Babbitt. And Ed really drew me in. I think there were a lot of, I know there are a lot of similarities in that his father was suffering with a chronic illness, as mine is currently. And I got to see Ed speak live in Las Vegas at a chiropractic seminar, Parker seminar, and seeing my father go through what he's going through now is just, it's a lot. And, I think, that power of one more, we're dealing with something right now with my dad in that, you're talking about a maverick, a pusher at the nth degree of, always being a hard worker, always, being a hard hunter, laborer, just always getting it done and sucking it up. And, him saying that, son, I don't think I'm going to be able to hunt this year has definitely hit home for me. But again, keeping it on a positive note with regards to Ed Mylett, during the time that I was really going through it and kind of soul searching and how I was looking to better inspire my team and staff and communicate with my patients, I looked at Ed Mylett because he would go after amazing guests, always trying to learn. And probably one of the most impressive qualities I saw in him was that he'd always compliment his guests by saying, I'm learning from you now. I'm so awe-inspired by somebody like a Jocko Willink or a Tony Robbins or Eric LeGrand. And I don't know if I'll ever meet Ed Mylett in person, but I said the next best thing was interviewing Eric LeGrand. I thought the similarities with Eric as me being paralyzed as a kid and Eric suffering a spinal cord injury and being paralyzed from the waist down, and hearing how amazing he was. And my good friend from Industry Magazine, Andrea, had put us in contact with each other. And it took a long time. And I have to say, I memorized the interview that Ed had did with him. And I was like, look, if I'm going to do this, it's like singing a Whitney Houston song. I got to bring it, right? Because you don't sing Whitney and you don't do Ed Mylett if you're not going to make sure you bring everything you got. So I made sure to view every podcast, every interview, every award that Eric had. And it wasn't that hard because Eric's story is amazing and he's amazing. And you're sitting there saying to yourself, here's a man that's a quadriplegic that smiled from the second he came in the store or the restaurant Cousins that we were at, through the entire interview, through the entire night. And everything he talked about was like lighting a candle and illuminating a room. And he embodied it. It wasn't fake. It was authentic. And he was a true testimonial of whatever life you have, live it to the fullest. And, so that was something that I think I'll always, who knows where my podcast future and career will go, but I'll always be grateful for seeing the Ed Mylett podcast of him and Eric and wanting to try my best to reproduce it and, and give my audience a good listen. So at any rate, the other podcast people that I really loved are, out there. And again, Andy Frisell I like because he's a no bullshit guy. I believe he's in the same camp as Ed Milet. And, I think my business coaching boss approach definitely had to improve as I got older, because I found myself measuring people on production. And I was so hard on people. And I was like, when I do this podcast, I have to sit there and own a lot of my mistakes. And God knows I have a long list. And so I was sitting there thinking to myself, okay, how are we going to help people learn from the errors and mistakes and the omissions that I made and how they can improve? And I used to laugh and say, to anybody that will listen, I don't know what it is about being a dad, a husband, or a boss, but I was an amazing trainer or mentor. And, I felt like I always struggled on the other three parts. And I was always super hard on myself. And, I would go into these podcasts or these listenings, and probably one of the most spiritually uplifting podcasters, I thought, and, I know the entire world has heard about him a million times, that and Tony Robbins. I think he is probably one of the most gifted orators, speakers, and presenters in the world. And I'm going to tell people a secret now that I haven't shared with too many people, but when I was at rock bottom during COVID, Tony had an audiobook, and I basically used it to reprogram how I thought about my current life situation, my physicality, my injuries, and my woes, and really went from a pessimist to an optimist, and sat there with, the mindset of going from good to great. And, working with clinical doctors and specialists, I was like, it's not registering. I'm not absorbing it. I'm not agreeing with them. And here I am, listening to Anthony Robbins and burning this into my frontal lobe and saying to myself, I can do this. And I ultimately did. And so, as we look through the podcast episodes, we were flashing through them today, as we were coming up with what I was going to talk about today on the podcast, I realized that when people are driving down the road and they're thinking about their week, their day, mistakes, what they could have done better, what they shouldn't have done, what they would love to do. And, I'm kind of there right now in that crossroads. And I think that so many people have that, but I think the average person is scared and afraid to change. And that even goes for myself. And I think that that's probably the biggest thing is, we call it analysis paralysis. You think yourself out of your next move. And, again, when we go back to coaching, I had so many special kids that I would tell them, listen, you have to react. You can't think. Once you think, you've already lost. You have to know you did the work. So in that moment, when you just react, success and greatness will follow. And so many times, whether it was a national player of the year or a national championship run or a state sectional or state championship, those kids would remember those moments and hear that voice in their head. And I thought, I'm like, you know what? When I hit 45 or 46, when COVID hit, it's already been, I guess, 4 years now, I had stepped off the basketball court and I couldn't have that part anymore. I didn't want to have it the way it was going to be. So I wanted to pivot. And I thought to myself, I'm like, hey, what can I do to help my audience? Because there's so many people out there that struggle with insecurities and confidence issues and, things and self-imagery. And, God knows I was there. And I remember, rolling in with like my prototypical doc outfits that I think I kept Nike in business. A good friend of mine during that time who had great kids, his name was Bob Federici. We used to laugh because we'd be sharing my my sneaker obsession, and I'd be sending over a dozen new sneakers a month that I'd be sending from Nike, from the LeBrons to the, my favorites for you guys out there. Probably don't remember them or even wore them, were the Steve Nashes. So I don't know if Chris Tardios listens to us right now. It was by far our most comfortable shoe. And, but moral of the story, when I couldn't embody that person anymore, I definitely needed to pivot. And I think that happens for so many people. It's not so much age. It could be, it could be opportunity. It could be injury. It could be, the economic environment, but we all run into situations that you time out and you have to make decisions on, what am I going to do next? Am I going to sit there and wallow in self-pity or self-doubt and say, I can't do this? Or am I going to power forward and come up with something new? For me, my newest thing has kind of been my fitness journey. And I take great pride in being 50 years old and walking into the gym. It happened to me today. I had a 30-year-old and a 40-year-old, and I felt exhausted, and I was laughing. I'm like thinking to myself, Sean, I'm going to kill you because you destroyed me yesterday. And now I'm starting Monday tired, and that's not a thing. So of course I had to suck it up. And, I got through my workout, and a guy was saying, man, how old are you again? And I was like, I'm 50. And, it's like, I used to think about that age like it's something bad. And I'm like, I'm proud of it. I work damn hard to look and feel the way I do. And I guard it like we guard freedom, like we guard, this country. And, and the only way I think people really truly appreciate something like that, and that's one of the biggest things about why we call this tough love, is when you lose it. And, last couple of years, I lost some, super valuable things to me, and some of their emotional, physical, people, et cetera, and, even just the transition in my dad's health is something that, that was always my rock. When I came back, or when we came back from Atlanta, my dad was, there with me every step of the way to move furniture, to cut down trees. I remember I put my first full court basketball court in at the first house we built, and it was awesome. It was a 120 foot or 130 foot basketball court regulation, did it right. And acrylic paint. I mean, it was, I kept looking at Google Earth because I was just blown away how beautiful it was. It was mine. And probably one of the testimonials of like who my dad was and who he is as a worker and a human was, we rented 3 or 4 dumpsters, huge ones, I don't know, 60, 70, 80 yards. I don't even know how they're measured, but these things were monstrous. And we got day laborers. I think we had 6 guys a day for a long holiday weekend. I think we did it on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And he dropped 140 trees in 2 days. And what we didn't run through the chippers, these guys ran in, or we ran into these dumpsters. And it might have been the hottest day of the year that summer. It was literally 100 plus with the humidity. It was ridiculous. And for you guys out there, of course, he didn't say a word until weeks later. Actually, he wouldn't even have said a word. My mom gave me hell about it. My dad got these insects called chiggers in all over his legs, and they ate his skin apart. And he didn't say a word. He was just sharpening chainsaws and just working, and I was so proud to be out there with him, just watching him just get it done. So, but again, when we talk about what tough love is and where it's going, I think when I have my time to just kind of get my thoughts out there and talk about, the direction and what it is, I think it's about reflecting on moments like that are milestones in your life and being super thankful that you had them, and how you can make them with your kids or the people you care about in your life, whether it's your wife, your family, your husband, your team, your workers, your son, your daughter, et cetera. I think it's super important to reflect on that. and, and memorialize those moments. So, but again, looking back where we started, where we're at, I'm beyond thankful. I'm beyond thankful for the comments. I know when we did the David Bryan of Bon Jovi podcast, I obviously knew as, a person born in the 70s, how huge, John Bon Jovi and David Bryan and their band is. But when my media team dropped that and our Instagram page changed and it hit 90,000 views in like an hour, we realized, and I don't even know, 17 countries, we were like, hey guys, this is pretty awesome. And I think even they recognized, because a huge social media guy had reached out, that we probably underutilized that launch, and you learn, right? We had a production with an awesome guy of one of the recovery devices, but it was our first remote podcast, and it was brutal. It lagged. He had some great stories. They got cut off or they didn't record, and we couldn't use the podcast. And it was like talking to your uncle or your grandpa or your dad. And I felt so bad. I didn't have the heart to call him to tell him we have to film the whole podcast again. We had to scrap it because the lag and the delay and the gibberish sounded like a scary movie and not a podcast. And so that'll be one for another date. So, but again, like I said, the direction that we're going, it's about, being, mentally uplifting, recognizing failures, and drawing a line in the sand between quitting and moving forward, not giving up on opportunities. If you really believe in something, that you should, even if you got to eat crow and take a knee and beg, you got to do what you got to do. Because if you want it bad enough, no different whether you're working for something physical, mental, emotional, relationship wise, you have to show people that you're willing to go that extra distance. And I think that's something that really resonates with me in this last couple of years, especially. So again, I want to thank you guys all out there. Today's podcast, especially on a Monday when this one drops, is about a feel-good day. And when you start your week, it should be uplifting. This is something that I want people to listen to say, wow, he was so complimentary. And if they have never heard of an Ed Milet or an Andy Frisella or a Jocko Willink, search them out, do the work, find these people. They're super, super talented and gifted at what they do. I learn from them. I grab their content. I love listening to their stuff in the morning and try to bring it to my audience. I bring it to my patients. I bring it to my kids. I try to, take these messages from their life experiences and the amazing people that have been through it and are at the top 1% of whatever their professional capacity is, to share it. Because if you don't want to level up, something's wrong, right? You should always want to be a little bit better than yesterday. And especially if you're the best, like they always say, the spot that's always, is always vulnerable is everybody trying to get to the top and knock you out of that spot. So if you're there, staying there is probably the hardest part. So at any rate, thank you so much to anybody who's just joined, to loyal listeners that have been there. I know my boy Dom is always quick to throw a thank you, or Paul. So thank you guys for being there since day one. Thank you to Clean Media and my guys that are, helping production. Early on, I had my boy Matt Calabria with me, absolutely super special human. And even Christian, who's now moved on, he's back in Pennsylvania with his new bride. And, not to jump off Matt, he's got his firstborn son right around the corner with his beautiful wife, Hannah. And I just like to say, thank you, because that's what podcasts I think are about. It's about creating a family, about creating a network, and showing value and continuing to bring value, each week. So guys, just want to say thank you so much. We are so beyond grateful to have you guys listening and sharing the podcasts and the episodes that we bring to you. We are blown away that it's been a little bit over a year and 50 plus episodes later. We look forward to keep bringing exciting guests and information that you guys find valuable, and keep commenting, keep liking, and keep sharing our work. We look forward to seeing you guys again soon. God bless.